towards the end, I thought the king actually did look like he was struggling slightly. The last time we recorded our podcast, you said you thought that the Princess of Wales would make an appearance at Trooping the Colour.
And you thought not, if I remember rightly.
Unlikely, I think I said.
And she was there, looking fantastic, and a right royal family affair it became. So, on Saturday, the Princess of Wales set the public, the press, and the palace alight with a warm, fuzzy glow of delight.
Despite the rain.
She was there from the palace along the Mall, watching Trooping the Colour with the children, and then in the coach to the palace, and finally on the balcony, side by side with the king.
Let's talk this through, because it was her first public appearance this year. We haven't seen her out at an official engagement, and there she was at the heart of the royal family, sandwiched in amongst senior royals with Prince William, the king. What did you make of that as a kind of an iconic image? How did you think she looked?
I thought she looked fantastic. I thought, as I wrote at the weekend, it was one for the history books. It just felt like there had been so much anticipation. Would she be there? Wouldn't she be there? To see her and the king both going through cancer, both, in their carriages, at horse guards, and then on the balcony, and then that sort of the surge of the crowd, so excited to see them. I think it was right up there with, significant moments for the last few years.
Yeah, it was a real sight, wasn't it? With her, with the children as well. And every time they come out, they never disappoint. They're very well behaved. I'm always amazed how well behaved those children are.
But
she looked well.
We're always delighted that Prince Louis just plays up just enough for our photographers. Heaving the window open, pulling the faces. Dancing away to one of the jaunty tunes. Prince Louis never disappoints, does he?
He's great value, isn't he? God bless him. But for me, that iconic image, which was actually on the front of the Sunday Times, was Charlotte, Princess Charlotte, with Kate behind her. And she looked so relaxed, the princess, who's been away, obviously ongoing chemotherapy treatment. Because on the Friday night, we'd had that briefing from Kensington Palace to say Kate is going to be there. There was a very, very personal message in which she said she has good days and bad days. And it did seem very, very personal. It did seem that she was kind of opening her heart about what she'd been going through as well. And there was that wonderful picture of her standing in front of the weeping willow tree in the Windsor estate, looking up, kind of looking hopeful. I felt there was something missing from her statement, though, that we had seen in that previous video message in March when she said, look, I'm going to be okay. I thought there was a really kind of cautious note.
I'm not out of the woods yet, she said.
Yeah, that's right, which is actually what I wrote when the king released his I'm coming back to work message. I said that he wasn't out of the woods, and she actually put it in her own words then.
I think she's been reading your pieces, Kate.
I think definitely,
for sure. She's using your pieces to write her messages.
I've already started suing her for copyright on that one. But no, I think it's important that there was that kind of cautious tone, wasn't there? That these things are going to take. She said that the chemotherapy will be carrying on, or she said her treatment will be carrying on for a few months.
Managing everyone else's expectations.
That's right.
So that the public very excited to see her back, but the public don't think this is it. That's it. She's back. And that's been the very strong messaging, hasn't it, been from Kensington Palace, that Trooping the Colour is not her full return to public life, and we've all got to be patient.
Yes.
And she's just got to take it in her stride. But it was, that message from her on Friday, ahead of Trooping, it was language that you don't really normally hear from members of the royal family. It was very emotional, very personal. It talked about, on the good days how she feels and how she feels on the bad days.
Yeah.
I just think there's something happening with the kind of messaging and language that both the King and the Princess of Wales are using around their illness. I think because Charles's messages have been quite emotional and personal too. So, it was a great moment, wonderful for us. I think the public was super pleased to see her. And there was just a feeling, wasn't there? You could almost feel on the balcony how pleased the King and William were to have her back there. And I was very struck by the positioning of the princess on the balcony. Last year, if you look at the pictures, the King was next to William. Mm-hmm. This year, he made sure that Kate was next to him, shoulder to shoulder. And
I thought towards the end, staying with them on the balcony in that sort of shot, towards the end, I thought the King actually did look like he was struggling slightly. He did look like it had been a long day for him, actually. And I did wonder whether perhaps he might have a look at his summer schedule, which we were told wouldn't be a full summer schedule, and certainly appears to be very much a full-on summer schedule. We're going to see him here at Ascot later today and most of this week.
Good luck to the Queen and the royal household and the palace trying to rein that in, because as we've talked about, he seems to be raring to go and not really slowing down.
Exactly, and I think with the princess, they've said sort of the opposite, haven't they? That they said, look, if she appears at things, and she will appear at some events over the summer, don't take it that this is her back. You know, just be grateful if you see her, and if you don't, or don't read into it if you do see her, and if you don't, you know, that she's just recovering and taking part in those normal things which she said in her message bring her joy, which I thought was interesting. You talking about that message about how it's not something we normally hear from the royal family, but that's always been the messaging from William and Kate, hasn't it, about their kind of love of the mundane, and the fact that she referenced the school run. You know, I mean, most mums sort of pull their hair out at the school run, but just shows you how poorly you've been if that's something you look forward to, I suppose. So going about your normal everyday business and the joy of that, and sort of seeing it afresh, having been through such an ordeal with your health, to then just take joy in just those regular being able to get up and feel well enough to do those regular things. I think it spoke volumes, didn't it, that statement?
And I think one of the other line that sort of struck out for me was she wanted to be there to support her family, because of course one of the lovely moments that we've loved seeing for the last few years at Trooping has been Prince George, Princess Charlotte, Prince Louis in the carriage up to Horse Guards and back and on the balcony, and it sort of made you wonder if she hadn't have been there, you know, the children would have been, who would have looked after them? Who would you have put in the carriage with them? But there was something very lovely about that moment during the parade where Kate was watching it from the balcony with the three of them, a little family unit, just sort of back together, and you could almost sort of see how pleased they were to be there with her. Let's talk about the children. I mean,
well, every time I see them, I think, and it's so sad, you know, I feel like it's aunties, you know, when you see a niece or nephew you haven't seen for a while, and you think, my goodness, haven't they grown?
Haven't they grown?
But they are the kind of the marker of passage of time, aren't they? Because everybody else sort of stays the same.
Yes.
But they have shot up, and that's the future, isn't it? And the social media message on Father's Day, of course,
lovely.
That was their first kind of social media message. They signed it off.
But yes, I love Charlotte, a contender for the new lady boss of the Queen. Camilla is known as the lady boss in inner circles. That's what she's known as. But just seeing Charlotte slightly bossing Prince Louis about, telling him to put his hands down when the national anthem happened, telling him to stop dancing. I think she's coming for Camilla's lady boss crown. She's the boss
Something
lady.
of the Princess Anne sort of second child, oldest daughter as well about her, I think.
Princess Anne.
Let's
talk about naughty noble.
Oh, yes.
Because we predicted naughty noble might be a bit naughty. So, of course, last year, the king was riding on the parade, and he rode Noble, this horse that had been gifted to the king by
the Mounties,
the Canadians, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. And Noble was a little bit of a handful for the king last year. He managed, but a little bit of a handful. She's quite a feisty mare. She actually escaped from the stables twice last year before trooping. This year...
Thanks for that, Canadians, Mounties.
In a little adaptation of the programme, the king, who's been through surgery this year, he's had a treatment, he's going through cancer treatment, adaptation, he didn't ride on the parade, so he was in a carriage. So taking one for the team, Princess Anne was riding Naughty Noble.
Good on her.
Naughty Noble definitely wants to live up to her name, because they came out the palace, Princess Anne riding Noble, and let me tell you, that horse was on fire. That horse was spooking all over the place.
I don't know how it would dare to misbehave with Princess Anne. And just one glance, and she's sort of...
She showed her former Olympic equestrian skills setting that horse. Well done, Anne.
Because, of course, she was at Montreal, wasn't she?
She sure was.
In the 70s, in the Olympics.
I think the king would have been very pleased. He was in the carriage, on a seat, not on Noble. Naughty Noble. Watch this space. Will Naughty Noble be back for a third trooping next year?
I hope so. I feel like we need T-shirts printed. Bring back Naughty Noble.
Kensington Palace has stressed that the appearance of the Princess of Wales was by no means a full return to public life. And she won't be here at Royal Ascot this week. But if she feels well enough, we might just see her again during the Japanese state visit this month, or even at Wimbledon in July.
And of course, the Princess of Wales said in her message, I am learning to be patient, especially with uncertainty. And I suppose we have to learn to be patient too and continue to give her the much needed time to heal that she herself has asked for. So Garter Day is significant because it's the one kind of honour that the King gets to choose, personally select who gets to be in his club in the Order of the Garter. And Andrew remains a Knight of the Garter, but he's not allowed in the procession anymore for reputational management reasons.
In the court circular, he was at the private lunch before.
He's allowed to go to the private stuff. He's just not allowed to go out in public showing off.
Interesting, isn't it? Because we were discussing the other day about the feuding brothers and Charles and Andrew at loggerheads over Royal Lodge. He's obviously still being included in all the sort of quite tight-knit, important family things.
Yeah, he's allowed to do the family things. It's just when it comes to the public perception of him. I think that's where, when he's walking, leading the family down at the King Constantine II's memorial and he was sort of puffing out his chest, that did not go down well.
That was suboptimal, wasn't it?
Very much.
So do you reckon you're going to get your order soon, Kate, as it's all for chivalry?
Well,
and it's the highest order. What odds that you might get
services to royal podcasting? I think so. But it's interesting the difference between
we
Garter
Day. Damehoods for that.
Well, frankly, yeah. Well, talking of damehoods, the King's birthday honours list was revealed. We're not going to go through the 1,077 names right now, but that's interesting in a different way because of the kind of vagaries of the British honours system is such that normal people can nominate people who've done well, who've done something great for their communities or something pioneering in the realms of science or art or whatever it may be. And then the King just sort of ratifies it and signs it off. But it was interesting this year to see Dame Tracy Emin, the artist, getting a damehood, which I thought was interesting because she met the King recently at a garden party and they've both come through cancer together and they've both shared that kind of health story when they had a chat at Buckingham Palace in May.
I really liked listening to her talking about it because actually for years, she started out in the YBA, the Young British Artists movement. She was seen as so anti-establishment. And actually listening to her last week talking about how honoured she was to receive her damehood, she talked about the fact that she was enjoying the fact that it meant she was finally accepted and acknowledged by the establishment. For all her work and for all her extraordinary art. So, yeah.
And someone else who fought the establishment in a way, of course, Sir Alan Bates, as he becomes now. He was the postmaster who fought for victory against the kind of Horizon post office scandal, where hundreds of sub-postmasters were accused of, financial mismanagement, but actually it was just a software problem with this Horizon software. And he led the cause through the High Courts to get victory for 555 postmasters. So having previously rejected an OBE, because he's a political as well, because they approach people, say, will you accept one of these honours? And previously he turned down an OBE and said no, because the chief executive, Paula Venables, at the time still had her honour, her CBE, and it was only when she gave it back that they came to him for the higher award of the knighthood, and he said yes. So that's a happy ending.
I think it'll be a very powerful moment and powerful images when he goes to Windsor Castle or the Palace to collect his knighthood to be invested.
Yeah, and I think the whole nation will be behind him.
So now we're going to talk about Royal Ascot, its importance, its history, and we expect the King and Queen to be here. In fact, we know the King and Queen are going to be here. Before we do, it's an extraordinary turnaround. A month or so ago, Charles the King and Catherine, Princess of Wales, both in hospital being treated for cancer. Engagements cut short, limited public appearances. The Prince of Wales taking on few more duties. Princess Anne and the Duke and Duchess of Edinburgh and Gloucester's doing much more.
And now the King is here. And we have pictures of Kate at the King's birthday parade, a momentous occasion, and historic, as you called it, occasion.
I think it was historic, and I feel like seeing the King with Kate at Trooping, it feels like the mood music around the royal family has slightly changed. It feels like cautious optimism that the nation can get behind, particularly as we know, we saw the King and Queen again at Garter. We're going to see them again this week. Almost every, the King's going to be here almost every day except for Wednesday. The Queen's going to be here every single day. It just feels like the movement is towards, they're back. A little bit more sort of full capacity than a few months ago when everything seemed quite uncertain. And I think, I can say this sitting literally on the parade ring in glorious sunshine, waiting for the King and Queen and the royal family to arrive. What are we most excited about Royal Ascot? It feels like a big moment, doesn't it?
It does. We're going to see them almost every day this week. I think it's the expressions on their faces. I love it when the royals' mask drops, when that kind of, they forget where they are. We saw it recently with the Queen. She was watching a horse racing and she was sort of biting her nails. I love those pictures that we get from these events. And the kind of joy, as you wrote at the weekend, of the King and Queen really getting behind a tradition that we know the late Queen used to love, and we used to love seeing the late Queen here, but they've really embraced it. And I think it's just those expressions, the fun, Princess Anne, obviously she loves horses, and seeing her here is always great. But just the atmosphere, I mean, I'm just looking around now at just dozens of really extraordinary hats and everybody having a good time. Like you say, that trooping on Saturday started in the drizzle. By the time the fly past came over at 1:00 over the top of Buckingham Palace, the sun had come out, and it felt symbolic. It felt like this was a turning point. It's been a really tough year for the royal family.
It's been a cloudy year, hasn't it? It's been a cloudy year.
It hasn't been straightforward. There's been lots of health difficulties and various other difficulties. And so early in the reign, I think that's, it can be potentially quite damaging to a new reign. But I think they're coming through it. These sorts of events, I think, showed them at their best. I mean, I can't think of any other event that is so quintessentially British, has this royal patronage, has the glamour, the glitz, and I think it's that kind of uplifting sort of event that, the royal family can really embrace. So, Roya, here at Royal Ascot, it's about the people, but it's about the horses too. So what can we look forward to?
There's excellent people watching here, but I have to say, frocks, hats, crowns aside, I get very excited about seeing the magnificent beasts. I get very excited about seeing the horses. I love a thoroughbred.
Right.
So I'm excited to, when it kicks off here, come down to the parade ring, see what looks in form. Look out for what's going to be racing past the post. And I don't know, it's very exciting when you see that flash of the silks going past the finishing post. It's just a unique feeling. Royal Ascot is unique. There is no other race meet, I think, in the world that carries the prestige that Royal Ascot does. So it's very exciting. Work shouldn't be this fun, should it, Kate?
It shouldn't really, should it? And I think the King and Queen share your enthusiasm, because they're talking here in the little booklet about the kind of the delight of having a winner at Ascot, because of course they did have a winner last year. I don't think they're expecting to have one this year, from what I understand.
No.
But you're the horse whisperer, Roya.
Well, I did speak to their racing advisor, John Warren, at the weekend,
who's going to be in the carriage today, the royal procession.
Yes, who said they've got some runners potentially Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. Don't
bet the house on those, though.
I'd say they're each way bets, Kate.
Okay.
I'd say they're each way bets.
That's very diplomatic.
Yes.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, Roya.
Thank you, Kate.
Bye-bye.
See you soon.